We had closed session and nothing to report out, is that correct? Yeah, nothing to report out from closed session. Okay, shall we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome everybody. It's the last board meeting of the year. Glad everybody could make it. Glad it's not blizzarding. Roll call, Rob?
Director Stevens.
Here.
Director Odette.
Here.
Director Rolfe.
Here.
Director Diamond.
Here.
Director Hetherington.
Here.
You're here.
Okay, special orders of business. Adopt resolution 2022-11 authorizing remote public meetings. Does anybody want to make a motion?
I move to extend Resolution 2022-11 authorizing Truckee, Tahoe Airport District to hold virtual public board meetings in accordance with AB 361.
I'll second.
Roll call?
Do we need the roll
Do
call?
we need to do this?
Yes, we do. All votes by roll call, please.
Director Stevens.
Here, yes. I'm not used to this. You've always called me last.
Alphabetical order.
Trying to mix it up a little bit. Director Odette.
Yes.
Director Rolfe.
Yes.
Director Diamond.
Yes.
Director Hetherington.
Yes. Review AB 2449 Brown Act teleconferencing rules update. Josh, you want to take that?
Sure. So included in the packet was a memo that we put together just kind of talking about the different ways in which an agency can do a teleconference meeting starting January 1st. So we thought it'd be a good opportunity just to kind of go over that with the board. So beginning January 1st, the law that will apply is AB 2449. And it really has three different ways we can do a teleconference meeting. The first is the old pre-COVID traditional teleconference rules. Just as a reminder, it's always okay for you to call in from a remote location as long as that remote location is publicly accessible and agendized on the agenda. So you'll remember, previously if you were on vacation and still want to participate in the meeting, we would list your location on the agenda and have a copy of the agenda posted there. That is, still permissible. The only restriction on that is that a quorum of the board must participate from locations within the jurisdictional boundaries of the district. The other, and please stop me if you have any questions. The other way that 2449 allows teleconferencing is AB 361 effectively. 2449 permits by statute us to use the AB 361 rules through the end of next calendar year. There's an important caveat, and the important caveat is that the grounds for hosting a 361 teleconference rule have to be in place. And the important one there is that there is a statewide declaration of emergency. So as you've likely heard, the governor's announced that effective the end of February, he anticipates rescinding that statewide declaration of emergency. If that is the case, then we will no longer be able to use the AB 361 very flexible rules we've been operating under for the past 3 years or so. It will effectively go away. Assuming that's the case, AB 2449 has a third way to do teleconference meeting. In these situations, it is okay for you to call in from a location which is not publicly accessible and not listed on the agenda if you can satisfy either a just cause or an emergency standard. There's more explanation in the memo as to really kind of what qualifies, but things to think about would be a sudden illness, caring for family members, or travel related to the agency or other public agencies. So it does not include like business travel, for example. In those situations, we will need to have the board, the rest of the board approve your participation. And, the mechanics of that are something that frankly, we're all still kind of working through, and we'll be working with board members, if you need to utilize those provisions, and would just request that you reach out to, Rob, Lauren, and myself as soon as possible when you're aware that you'll need to use one of those, so we can kind of work to make sure all the hoops are set up. Some unique rules related to how that meeting is actually held. And an important one is that if a single one of the directors is calling in under AB 2449 from a private location, then a quorum of the board must be physically here in this boardroom. Another requirement, if you are calling in from a private location and there's another person over the age of 18 in the room with you, you need to announce that and your general relationship to the person. So, the other person here in my room is my spouse, and, something like that. It will be, frankly, it's going to be a little clunky, I think, and a little interesting, and we'll kind of have to work through that. The other requirement, which is a new one, is you need to keep your video on during the meeting if you're the person calling in as a director. That's a new requirement in the rule. I know we generally do try to leave our video on, but I know especially sometimes people have Wi-Fi and other issues. Law doesn't recognize that. It requires video to be on. So that was, those are kind of the new ways of moving forward. 2449 is available starting January 1st, but I don't really see it as, practically something you'll want to utilize until after 361 rules go away, which would be March 1st, absent further direction from the governor. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions of Josh? So we don't need to make a decision on what we want to.
Nope. This was just to kind of talk about the new rules,
Okay.
and then introduce them. And I think more discussions a little bit closer to a March date.
Okay, great. Thanks for the update. Is there any public comment on what Josh just explained? Okay, next order of business, a special thank you to Tahoe Truckee local candidates. This was circulated to the 27 candidates who ran for office, and it came to me via Sarah Coolidge from the North Tahoe PUD, and I asked her to explain to me how this came about. And it was sort of her brainchild. In 2016, she wanted to celebrate the end of the election, whether she won or not, and she went to the North Tahoe Business Association Passport to Dining, and T. May Duggan had a bunch of postcards printed up with everybody's name, and they passed them around and they signed them, and then they mailed them to candidates. And it became more practical over time to do it via email. So instead, this year they printed up this big card and they had people sign it at the event and mailed it to the 27 candidates. I think it's a wonderful tradition. And I can just say personally, it came after the election when I thought everything was going to be settled and I'd be able to relax and sleep, and I didn't realize it was going to take months for Nevada County and Placer County to count their ballots and come up with an answer. So this came across my email and it was very uplifting, and I'll just read. True heroism is remarkably sober, very undramatic. It is not the urge to surpass all others at whatever cost, but the urge to serve others at whatever cost. By Arthur Ashe. And I just wanted to acknowledge that. I think it's, that's, sorry. It was a tough thing to do, and all 27 of us had a shared experience, and whether, regardless of the outcome, I think everybody on that list is passionate and has a lot to offer, and I hope that you'll stay engaged All right. Any public comment? Sorry.
Tissue's right there.
Okay, that's enough of that. Okay, modification of agenda. Does anybody have any modification of agenda? Anything you want to? Speak your piece reminder. Okay, I was told, I think Mark, somebody found the old poster and put it on the back of the wall, which I'm very happy to see. Used to be up here years ago and then disappeared for a while. But I think all of these norms apply to all of our meetings. Pay attention, be aware, and attend to the world and the people around you. Listen, focus on others in order to better understand their points of view. Be inclusive. Welcome all groups of citizens working for the greater good of the community. Don't gossip, and don't accept when others choose to do so. Show respect. Honor other people and their opinions, especially in the midst of a disagreement. Be agreeable. Look for opportunities to agree. Don't contradict just to do so. Apologize. Be sincere and repair damaged relationships. Give constructive criticism. Stick to the issues and don't make personal attacks. Take responsibility. Don't shift responsibility and blame onto others. Okay. Now's the time for public comment. If anybody has public comment on anything that's not on the agenda, you're free to come and talk to us. Anybody? No. Okay. Consent agenda. Does anybody want to make a motion?
I would actually like to pull
Oh, you'd like to pull some, okay.
tab 7.
Tab 7. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at
That's the
which,
It's number 3.
number 3, okay. Oh, tab 7, yeah. Okay,
I'll make a motion to approve tab minutes, monthly service bills and fees, the 2 extensions, and the Midwest ATC contract amendment for weather reporting services.
Second.
roll call.
Director Heatherington,
Yes.
Director Diamond,
Yes.
Director Rolfe,
Yes.
Director Odette,
Yes.
Director Stevens.
Yes,
Thank you.
now that I'm back in my place.
I apologize, is there any public comment on the consent agenda? Okay. Tab 7, did you want to?
Yeah, it's a subsection of this, the policy instruction 310. There's a number of edits in that document. I have a general concern with the document as it's written because it does sound like we are, and this is coming from somebody who was 2 decades in global marketing, that we are trying to promote the airport as a destination for aviators not within the district. So which I think is a net result or a net goal of increasing operations. I'm not sure culturally if that's what we want to do. And I would prefer to either see 310 eliminated entirely or rewritten to focus on informing constituents about what is going on in the district and not about promoting the aviation services nationwide.
You object to marketing the district.
I do object to, especially because it does talk about a national scope, which to me makes it seem like we are trying to increase operations and visitation here.
Is there a specific sentence you don't like or that you think promotes that?
If you read through it, it virtually all says that. But I do feel like and I don't know if it would be 310, I do think that it is valuable to have a policy that specifically speaks to informing our constituents and about what the airport is doing here. My problem with it is the marketing piece. a national marketing initiative to.
Yeah, from a management perspective, I can just add, I'm comfortable with eliminating the entire policy as well, and perhaps reformulating in our strategic plan discussions in this coming year about exactly what parameters the board would like to see us engage the community and how and to what end. I think maybe this policy is very overly broad in nature, I would say. I agree.
Anybody else?
No objection.
No objection?
Yeah, it makes sense to me if, you know.
Yeah.
I think when we get to the strategic, talk about it.
Yeah, it felt really dated to me when I read it. It
Yeah.
just kind of, it is. I mean, it's older. Kathy Egan signed it last, I guess. Okay. Is there any public comment on this issue? No. Okay. All right, Rob, do you want to revisit this with the strategic plan, or should we just do away with it now? And
I think eliminating it in its current form would be sufficient, and then certainly we can build aspects of goals within the strategic plan around communication.
okay. Do you need a motion to eliminate?
We do, yes.
I move that we eliminate policy instruction number 310.
I'll second it.
If the board's comfortable, that motion could include adopting the rest of the PIs as revised, or we could do a separate motion after.
Well, let's do them.
Okay.
All right, I move that we,
One other comment, though.
oh, okay.
On the disadvantaged business that's part of 303, I'm trusting that Josh will put the right language in there. I saw you put the placeholder.
Yeah, I added a sentence in there to address that, is that I'd like to work with council to have the proper disadvantaged business statement add to that, and we just didn't have it prepared in time for the meeting today.
And that we don't need to see it again, because we know that Josh will do an awesome job putting that statement together. So that was the only other comment.
Okay, now I move that we eliminate policy instruction number 310 and accept the revisions to the other policies as defined.
There's also another motion to dissolve policy instructions 301 and 316. If you could say that as well.
Okay, and to additionally dissolve policy instructions 301 and 316.
I'll second it.
Director Odette,
Yes.
Director Stevens,
Yes.
Director Rolfe,
Yes.
Director Diamond,
Yes.
Director Hetherington.
Yes.
Moving right along. Okay. Truckee Fire District Training Facility, Chief McKechnie.
All right, thank you, directors. Thanks for having us. For the record, I'm Kevin McKechnie. I'm the fire chief of the Truckee Fire Protection District. I brought along our operations chief, Matt Parkhurst here. He's going to help out with the presentation tonight. So the purpose of our presentation today is to see if the airport district is interested in becoming a partner in the development of a regional training facility. In our region, we have about 300 first responders that would benefit from a regional training facility. Additionally, the training facility would be a great platform for interagency cooperation, network building that would serve us well in a disaster. When I think about what we deliver for our community as the Truckee Fire Protection District, I always arrive at the term preparedness. We are continuously prepared to respond to and mitigate emergencies that may happen in our community. As you can imagine, there is a lot that goes into being prepared for the wide range of emergency events that we may encounter. A regional facility would go a long way for developing and maintaining our preparedness to respond. We could perform live fire training, specialty rescue training, wildland fire training, and we could use the facility for hose testing, pump testing, ladder testing. We could also use the facility to test our fire investigation theories or perform live fire demonstrations for public education. But one of the most important uses would be to network with other service providers like the Truckee Tahoe Airport District
and cross-train for hazards specific to your facility. There's a multitude of uses for this regional asset. That being said, it will take buy-in from several agencies and another signboard with lots of logos to get it done. When I think about these projects, I like to consider the future of our small but maybe not so small town. You know, I suspect we'll see continued growth and expanded needs for service, and we'll also need more well-trained first responders to keep this place safe. And with that, I believe a regional training facility would be a smart investment in our future. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Parkhurst. He has a visionary presentation on what the facility could look like, as well as some planning ideas to get us there.
Good evening, directors. As Chief McKechnie pointed out, I'm responsible for all the operations. One of those things is training, and I'm very passionate about this project because through training, either recurrent or initial training of new fire cadets, we can produce a good product, and that means safe firefighters. It means well-trained and experienced ones. This is an example of a training tower that we've been looking at. It's a pre-built modular unit. It has 3 levels of fire in the concrete side of it. There's provisions for mitigating the smoke, so we can address air quality resources measures and things like that. And then part of the structure is not only live fire training, which is key, but there's a RIC, or a rapid intervention crew component to it. There's rapid search and rescue, there's breach and breaking, there's roof prop. There's a lot of things that encompass this one modular unit. Another thing that's nice about it being modular is we can order it, we do the site work, it gets plopped, it can be turnkey pretty quickly. Next slide. Here's an example of a shooting range, and part of that community buy-in is incorporating our local law enforcement, possibly with a on-site indoor shooting range. This one's not indoor, no noise is a concern. But currently our fire department, or our police department, has to go all the way to Pyramid to do qualification. Chief McKechnie ran into CHP doing qualifications out of our Boca shooting range, and you can imagine that's probably not ideal for them. So if we can leverage their budget dollars to incorporate into that budget. There's a rail car prop. As you know, the rail goes through Truckee. It's one of our biggest target hazards, and we've been gone a long time, knock on wood, without a derailment, but it's important to have firefighters prepared to deal with this, and one of these props is key. Of course, that brings us to the airport. We've, as you know, most aircraft incidents happen within a 5-mile area of the airport, so it's important to have live fire ARF props, not only for firefighting capabilities, but for extrication purposes. You wouldn't want a firefighter for the first time to be fiddling with a Cessna Citation 10's door mechanism for the first time in a live situation. So the training ground's really where that happens. We'd also like to get a light aircraft one. That's what this airport mostly serves, is a lot of light aircraft. And they have their own unique hazards, ballistic recovery chutes, things like that. So it's important to have that prop as well. I-80 goes through our district, a lot of miles of it, so vehicle extrication and vehicle fires are an increasing threat. There's whole new genre of electric cars which pose another extreme hazard when involved in a fire, so auto extrication is another big part of what we do. In partnering with TTSA and TTAD, it's important to stay concurrent and train with them in chlorine emergencies. As you know, one of the target hazards within our district is a sewer treatment plant, and they use chlorine. And so if they ever have an incident, they have a response team, but it's important for us as their secondary or even primary in some cases to train with them. So partnering with them to get a chlorine prop. Next slide. Confined space is another aspect of what we do, and that again would tie into the sewer treatment plant and other service infrastructure within our district. Next slide. Depending on the size of the property that we're allocated, we'd like to get an EBOC course. This would not only serve the fire district and the surrounding fire departments with being better prepared for emergency services response during Code 3. This particular example has a slick track, which winter driving is a pretty large hazard in this area. So the more we train, the safer we can be. Next slide. This is, I'm sorry, emergency vehicle operation course. So, and I'll show another example of that. The next slide is what we currently do with the aid of the airport. This is provided to us by our insurance company, and we set up a cone course and we accomplish this basic competency course, but we don't currently have a facility to where we can actually get up to speed and do, like I said, some of the recovery maneuvers and whatnot. Next slide. So here's a couple of examples I just pulled off the internet for the slideshow, but the one in the lower right corner kind of shows kind of my ideal wish list of everything all encompassing, and includes not only the burn building, the EVOC course, but a classroom that you can see the water settling pond, which would handle any of those environmental issues with recovering water. In the wintertime, that settling pond would freeze over and provide us an area for ice rescue situations. In the summertime, it provides an area where we can draft from and do wildland engine operations, drafting operations, and other water related rescue training. And then, you know, it's kind of a phased approach, and I'll talk about that in a second. Next slide. So we talk about in the community a lot of the best use of the land that will serve the most people directly and indirectly. Having a training facility kind of like over ideally between Jorger and the airport property kind of protects not only their conservation of the land use down there, but it also protects airport right of way. You wouldn't want a lot of high density living or apartments down there, which would create an additional target hazard, whereas a training facility would not only provide our district 54 employees with valuable training that we currently have to go elsewhere for, but the surrounding fire departments the same opportunity. Next slide. So here's some potential partners. TTSA, we talked to them earlier today at their board meeting. Of course, you, us, the Town of Truckee Police Department, if they would like to join in. Of course, North Tahoe Fire, North Star Fire, Olympic Valley Fire, and Southwest Gas is up there because they currently are pretty big sponsors of ours. They've plumbed a meter prop at our Donner Pass station where we can do live fire meter training there. They plumbed that, requires a lot of gas and it's not metered, so they're a pretty good sponsor for that, and we would look to them as a partner for supplying natural gas to not only the burn building, but any other props that would require live fire. Next slide. So the plan for production, of course, there's going to be a lot of planning. This meeting is just kind of a preliminary, you know, feeler to see how many partners we can get involved. The funding, all of the fire districts currently in our area, we've all allocated money for this, and that totals to close to $1 million so far, and we could, of course, leverage more in the future. Then the course of design phase, the strategy, how we get there with the different stakeholders and their contributors, and then the launch. And then the timeline, this is just a super rough timeline, of course, but 2022, we'd really like to establish a location and acquire a location and land for that training center, because the amount of land really kind of depends on all the other things. 2023 to begin the design base of the fan based on that land size. 2023, I've also identified budget and funding resources, and 2023 into 2024, hopefully we could begin the infrastructure phase of the construction, and then hopefully by 2024, the training tower would be constructed. Next slide. So like I mentioned earlier, we'd like to do a first phased approach to that construction, and it's all based on the land allocation. But at minimum, we'd like to get a training tower, at least an ARF prop, some gas props from natural gas and propane. Involve Truckee PD and other stakeholders to future, just kind of build out in different stages with a possible shooting range, a confined space prop. And then, you know, obviously according to the size, if we could get an emergency vehicle course, classrooms there, the tank car prop, chlorine prop, and additional aircraft props. Kind of touched on this earlier, but to kind of jump over into the financing, planning is going to be a huge crux of the process, of course, but with financing, we would really try to leverage all the participating agencies to look for grants. I would like to leverage the airport's access to the FAA grants. We would be, as fire departments around the area, would be leveraging Homeland Security grants. and things like that to try to hopefully fund all those things. And then, of course, the implementation. Again, it goes back to the amount of land that we acquire. So that phased approach really kind of ties into that. And we just prioritize, and a lot of unanswered questions would depend on how we implement that. Thanks. So I'd like to hand it back to Chief McKechnie for a quick summary and we answer some questions.
Yeah, thanks, Chief Parker. It's a great job. So I think a fair question is why this? Why now? You know, what's changed? In order to answer that, I think we need to go back in time. As you may know, Truckee Fire was an all-volunteer fire department up until about 1988. Firefighters were members of the community, and in many cases, they're service providers for their day jobs. We had Rocco Moore, Craig Harvey, Paul Spencer, and who could forget little Joe Aguera, right? They all work for the sanitary district, but they're also volunteer firefighters. There are several similar examples of this cross-trained, multi-talented individuals with the hospital, schools, airport, PUD, and the sewer plant who also volunteered as first responders. These service providers and firefighters provided that valuable connection between the agencies that unfortunately no longer exists. Truckee Fire, as with our regional partners, is now a 100% career fire department. You know, many of our firefighters commute to work from far away, and with this we have lost some of that agency connection and local knowledge. And right now I'm going to hand it back to Chief Parkers. He's got a story about some agency connection between Truckee Fire and the airport.
Not to take a whole lot of time, but the airport was instrumental in my career. Believe it or not, I was a Truckee Airport employee at one time, and they worked around me going to paramedic school, and they not only encouraged that, but they allowed me to leave on fires because I was also a current volunteer firefighter at the time when we had volunteers. So that's really kind of enabled me to pursue the current career that I'm in now, and that was through participation with the airport. My aviation experience, I'm an FAA certified aircraft mechanic and a private pilot. So that, as Chief McKechnie alluded to, that made me the subject matter expert for all things related to aircraft incidences. And I've passed that knowledge down to firefighters and captains throughout the years. And we currently, the airport supports us in our ARF training, and we currently have to send firefighters 2 at a time as budget will allow to the San Bernardino Training Center. And we appreciate that support a lot. And with a possibility of a localized training center, not only can we better and more efficiently train our firefighters locally, all of the surrounding agencies which participate in the air show will also have that same expertise, even though they don't have airports in their jurisdictions. So that's just an airport. And believe it or not, Chief Jabot, I hired him when I worked at the airport maintenance, and he's now the chief of North Star Fire. He was also an airport employee at one point. And with that, we'll entertain any questions.
All right, go ahead, Rick.
Just a reminder about using the microphones just for public. Thank you, sir.
When you say looking for whether we want a partner, what does that mean, being a partner?
Yeah, good question. You know, the whole fire airport training thing started several years ago with the Town of Truckee multi-agency, multi-site planning study. I don't know if you guys remember that or aware of it. Truckee Fire was a partner, the airport, Recreation District, Town of Truckee had several different sites, and one of them was the non-aviation site here at the airport, where we proposed putting a training facility co-housed with the aquatic invasive species. Unfortunately, we kind of lost traction with that idea with the FAA, I believe, and so we're trying to start the conversation again with the Regional Training Center, and we're really looking for any level of partnership. So, we're kind of looking for this regional approach, and so when we talk about who our partners are, we're talking about basically looking at your boundaries and seeing how they overlay the other fire districts and fire departments in the area, and trying to partner with them and build them a training facility as well. And so really the partnership can be on any level. It can be assisting with planning. You guys are obviously really good planning agency and land use agency. It could be financial, very appreciated of the grant program that's administered by the airport district. It could be land. It definitely will be a prop. You know, we would ask you to procure an aircraft prop for us. And then also, as Chief Parkhurst alluded to, possibly some grants. And so being an agency that can procure grants through, say, the FAA.
How, if you build the entire facility, how many acres is it?
Well, it is modular, and so we can sort of build the suit depending on the site. We could be small. I would say probably not any smaller than 5 acres, but probably as big as 10 or 15 acres as well.
A good example is if you're familiar with Truckee Meadows Community College, the Dandini facility. If you go up 395 north in Reno, there's that site you can clearly see from kind of the highway, and that has a smaller EBOC course, and there's a big training tower that's there, and all of the Reno fire agencies use that. We've been there before. We currently just completed training at the Carson City facility, and they're a live fire facility, but as you can imagine, it's very expensive for all of the agencies within the Tahoe Basin to drive down there, because it's not just time, it's overtime. We pay the Carson City a facility fee. If we do the Dandini facility, we have to pay for all the fuel that we use there. So it's cost prohibitive, but that's kind of a scale of things. And the more, like Chief McKechnie alluded to, the more land we have, the better we can make it. One of the key features of having it modular is if we get classrooms on site, then we can offer it to host not just live fire training, but the classroom portions of it, officer trainings, incident command trainings, lots of state fire marshal classes. You can imagine coming to the Tahoe Basin is very attractive for companies that offer those training to host here. And then if we open that classroom space up to not only our local districts, but we can open it up to, as far as Roseville, Sacramento, a regional, and then they come up here and they would not only take the class here, but they would support the local economy because they have to stay in lodging, they have to eat in restaurants and things like that. But that, like I said, as the modular phased approach, that could happen later on down the road.
Depending on where this thing is located, I'd be very curious, and I don't think you have the answer right now, how it affects airport operations. And you want to acquire the land. Dealing with the FAA is difficult. And they helped us buy a lot of this land, and they would have to approve it. We're trying to do a simple land exchange with TTSA, and it's locked up in the FAA evaluation. And that's just for a land swap. If this was a purchase, it could be very difficult. And would this use require FAA approval? I don't know. Those are kind of all the questions that, I like the idea of what you want to do. The question is, if you had to pick a spot, where would you put it right now?
Ideally, my Christmas present would be just right over here, just straight off from where we're looking here, down over the bluff. We'd be underneath the airport right away, and would protect that airspace. Another
near the bus barn?
Between the bus barn and the old Martis Dam Road.
Is that
our land?
TTSA?
It is, and so, but I know I'm very much aware of your land swap and that kind of stuff, and then it kind of ties back into really what we're looking for is that kind of land. Ideally it would be down there because it would be below the airport's right away, so underneath that approach path. It ties up land, so then it doesn't become a target hazard, because you could imagine if somebody wanted to put in apartment complexes down there or something like that, that would do the opposite. It would increase our target hazards within our district, because as I mentioned earlier, 90% of all aircraft incidents happen within that 2 to 5 mile radius of the airport. So going back to that biggest and best use of the land, it's land that ideally we would want to protect as vacant. But if we put a training facility there that serves not only all of your constituents, but over at the lake as well, then it kind of is the best of both worlds.
You met with TTSA today. What did they say?
Yeah, TTSA was very receptive to the idea as well. Thought it might be a great use and a great asset for the community. And they directed staff to do sort of a land assessment of their properties and what constraints that they may have related to zoning and setbacks from their operation and flyway restrictions. And also to look for what they would prefer as a suitable site for the training facility.
That's the end of my questions.
Mine are pretty short. You mentioned having to pay to go elsewhere to train. So would you be offering your site for fee to other fire districts?
Yeah, I think conceptually we would. I mean, obviously not the partners that are in this region.
That was my second question.
Yeah, so
No one in our district would have to pay,
No,
which is the same as the school district boundaries.
correct. Yeah.
And I don't know if this is clear to anyone else, but I'm not clear on the ask here. Other than us saying, yes, I totally support what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I think we're looking for the board to empower staff to work with the fire district on the development of a regional training facility, sort of at this preliminary stage.
Okay, that's it for me.
I'm intrigued, sorry. I'm intrigued by the idea of having classes from Sierra College associated with this. I don't, they offer paramedic now, is that right?
I don't know
local
if they have a
one?
paramedic
They do
program.
in Roseville campus.
Oh, Roseville campus,
Yeah.
okay.
Um,
I remember when Andy McKechnie went off to Feather River College and to study firefighting, and they yanked the program before he got there. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a trend, that there are fewer programs around. It sounds intriguing to me. I think it'd be wonderful for our kids to have that kind of vocational opportunity here, and to have the. And my other question was about that. You mentioned the FAA grants. What exactly do you have in mind? That we work with the FAA to get grants? Is that something the FAA provides? I don't know.
Yeah, there are a number of programs around this type of firefighting training with airfields in the way of providing props and those kind of materials, resources for these kind of opportunities. So that would be something we can work with the fire district on to apply for something associated with the training facility like this, to provide the equipment to be on the ground to use for training. Yep.
And to touch on your earlier, we currently work with the high school now to, that's Trent's program, what's that called again?
It's called the Pathways.
Program.
Yeah.
And I've actually reached out through different channels to see if the Sierra College would be interested in, if the facility got built out to a point where we had classroom and a burn, then we could offer or partner with the college to do a full academy. And that would benefit the entire region-wide, because one thing I probably forgot to mention is it's a lot easier to turn a paramedic into a firefighter, because going that direction is about 6 months worth of training. To go firefighter to a paramedic is about double that time, a year to 2 years. And there's the year of didactic, and then the clinical time, and then the internship. And so it's, as everybody's feeling the pinch with employees and trying to find good qualified people, it's just another strategy. And one of the first slides that I showed was not only recurrent training for all of our districts and firefighters, but initial training and recruiting through the Pathways program, which is why it's super important for us to support that program, because we're hopefully inspiring kids at a young age to be firefighters and serve their communities. And that support would come right back tenfold.
My question, the slide that you've got the partner logos on and it says potential partners, why, for the other fire districts, why would they be potential partners? Are they not on board with this already?
No, they're on board. They wouldn't be potential partners. They're locked in and 100% invested. They've got money set aside. We've been talking about it for years, and so.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there's no concern that we
No.
do this and North Tahoe says, we don't want any part of that. Okay.
No, I think the airport district would be a potential, TTSA, law enforcement. then potentially CAL FIRE, U.S. Forest Service, state parks.
Right,
CHP.
right.
Excuse me.
And the more partners, of course, the more cost sharing.
Right, right. So the next question I have about it is I guess similar to one of the things that Rick asked, but more specifically about when you're doing the burn training, how much smoke and visibility reduction would we be looking at?
That was a good question.
Because this all gets recorded. I don't know if he's getting picked up. Do you?
That's a good question, and TTSA board members brought that up as well. Of course, we're not trying to do anything that doesn't, comply with the Air Quality Resource Board. So that would, gone are the days of being able to burn hay and tar paper and live furniture and all that. So a lot of the burn buildings, especially the modular one that we looked at earlier, is natural gas. And that's why Southwest Gas is a huge partner in that, because we're really hoping to be able to leverage some of their support with that.
Okay, so we're not thinking compromised visibility. I'm just
No,
thinking
and
you're right.
Over the hill, like I talked about my ideal location,
Right.
rather than, if you remember the original one that Chief McKechnie mentioned that incorporated the invasive species cleaning area, is very conspicuous. It's right next to Highway 267. We'd have to put up signboards, do not report fire, it's a training only,
Right.
things like that. So, yeah, there's going to be smoke and steam, but probably not. It would be well within compliance of the air quality resource.
Okay, my next question is it sounds like this is going to get pretty expensive. You've got $1 million already, but it sounds like that's probably a fraction of what this is going to be. When we get to the point where we're talking about investing money into this, and this might be a hard question, is it better for us to invest money in this as opposed to, for example, if we were to invest money into Measure T to advance those services? That and maybe expand that to something North Tahoe Fire could have at the North Shore?
Yeah, that's a good question, kind of tough to answer. I think they're kind of two separate things. And, I sort of see this training facility as really feeding this issue of staff and training and preparedness and the core functions of the fire department, sort of in perpetuity and a place to go to develop staff and sort of train and find our limitations and test ourselves, test our equipment. So a little bit two different things, and Measure T, and we love Measure T, and it's doing so much good work, and it's its own special partnership, and it has its own components of leverage of getting more and more work done, and we know tons more needs to be done and needs to be done at the lake, and so in terms of the investment, I think this one. We're trying to align it again with sort of your airport boundaries, matching the school district and the other fire departments in those boundaries. Those folks that I see as benefit from this airport, right? The folks, they land their planes here and they go over to the lakefront. They pay taxes on the lakefront.
Here too.
What's that?
A lot of them live over here too.
Right. But we have the impact. We sort of see the impact of the airport in the Truckee Fire District. And the airport district doesn't pay taxes, right? So we don't see any revenue to our primary revenue source being property taxes, whereas the benefit is much broader. And I think we're really looking to sort of align those and sort of marry up those boundaries with the services that we provide as first responders and supporting that part of our business.
To touch on location as well, I don't think there's really a suitable location at the lake. Another advantage of having it here is the airport is actually one of our target hazards, so having it here and then inviting them over, because they are our mutual aid responders. They're the ones that come in secondary or come in, they're the call the cavalry. So like I touched on earlier, we wouldn't want them to see an aircraft for the first time on that call. You want them to see that in a training environment first.
All right, no, that makes sense. So my last question about it is, are you familiar with the 40-acre parcel that the airport already owns that's actually on the table for the land swap?
Yeah, I think we are. I mean, we've seen it on the maps. We've seen the parcel maps and who owns what, especially on this north side of the airport.
Right.
Yeah, so
The reason I ask that is I just wonder if that would be, with regard to the benefit of the community, if that would be a better location for this. It is more isolated from the roadside. And then I think that if I understand the parcel that you're talking about over by the bus barn, that could be used for other purposes. And I know the number of people at the town are curious about whether we could use that in some way for moving light industrial off of the river. And I wonder if you did have some enthusiasm from TTSA, whether they would be open to giving access to that back parcel where you would have virtually unlimited space. It's certainly you said 10 to 15 acres, and that's a 40-acre parcel that's completely isolated.
and this is part of the land swap?
This was what is on the table for that swap, yeah.
Okay. I guess I was thinking the land swap was going to give you some sort of steep land up near the departure end of runway 29er.
Right, that's what TTSA would give us, and we would
Right.
give them that 40-acre flat parcel that you
Okay.
can actually see
Yeah.
up in that kind of.
It's adjacent to the property of the bus barn, which is currently the TTSA area.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's just depending how big of a footprint you look at that would get into this 40 acres.
Okay.
Potentially. I think Director Dive is suggesting to even shift it further onto that 40 acres away from the bus barn as a concept.
We're looking at anything, right?
Yeah,
Any piece of land.
beggars can't be choosers. I mean,
Yeah.
we're back when the project was first proposed, and it was over here, and it was a small 5-acre parcel, and then the invasive species was around the outside, and then it kind of pushed us into the middle. It's like, we were still excited. I'm passionate about it because training equals safety, which equals better product for the community. It just makes us all better suited. It reduces our costs because we're no longer sending people to San Bernardino or Carson City. Another benefit of the training center, if I didn't touch on in that, is those live fire exercises are directly related to our ISO rating. We currently only get partial credit because we have to go to Carson City or the Northern Nevada facility. If we had our own facility, not only would it improve our ISO rating with regards to live fire training, it would also improve North Tahoe, North Star, Olympic Valley, all of their ratings, because they could check that box in their ISO rating that yes, we do live fire training. Not only we do that, but it's incorporated with all of our surrounding agencies that would be providing mutual aid.
What is an ISO rating?
The Insurance Services Office. they're
So
the
our
ones
insurance
that-
goes down.
Hopefully.
Exactly, yeah.
Common man speak.
They rate fire departments. ISO rates fire departments, and one of our scores is facility training, they call it. And because we don't have a facility, we don't get points for that.
That's all for me. Thanks, guys.
But it wouldn't affect necessarily the getting of insurance for a homeowner,
No, it affects the rates, so the amount that you pay.
right?
Yeah.
So, so I was recently involved with the project, and we had our dream discussion, and then they started looking at permits, and it kind of all fell apart. So, and in my other life, I deal with air quality management issues. So it seems to me there'd be great benefit front end to be talking to Northern Sierra Air Quality Management District, because they will set criteria on hourly, daily, quarterly, and annual emissions, because there will be emissions. And they'll set that on you on CO, NOx, particulate matter, because there will be as much filtration as you provide, there will be emissions. So that would be a very beneficial thing at the front end before you spend a lot of time.
Yeah.
Because right off the bat, it would be it could be very interesting. The other thing is that do you expect having the aircraft or a rail car inside the building, or that would be outside the building?
Yeah, the rail
They
The
would
rail
have to
car
be
and the
outside
aircraft
the
would be
building.
outside, and they,
Right.
they get plumbed up with natural gas to sort of create the fire effect that the firefighters see, and they go attack with the hose lines.
So I grew up, my dad was Army Air Corps, and we used to go to Van Nuys Airport and watch them set the planes on fire and watch the firefighters go in their silver suits and put it out. I have very many vivid memories of that. That is going to put a lot of smoke out. And I assume this would be run not just in the summertime, but also annually. And you'll be running this not just for the local 5 or 6 districts, but if you're going to build this type of a facility, you're going to be bringing other entities here. That we have a significant issue with inversions here for probably 5 to 6 months of the year. And we all see it when we see the brown. And this would be a huge source of smoke and particulate matter. And it's something that is going to be of concern to the community at large. And is that going to happen once a week because you're going to be bringing people in? Is it going to happen once a month? That's something very much that I think you need to address to the community front end. And it goes back to how much particulate matter, how much NOx, how much CO that you're putting out into the environment, CO2, all that stuff. The other question I have is, in terms of when you're building your model of how this is going to be used, I would assume you'd be developing that pro forma of, your big cost of what it's going to be to develop it. There's going to have to be financial annual costs associated with it, which are going to come out of your budget in other ways. So does that mean you're not going to be able to gas, they're still going to charge you for your gas that you're going to put to pipe through this equipment? At some point, how is that pro forma going to work when you run that? You're going to have to start bringing people in here, other training opportunities, and then that ties back to how often it's being used. So the other question I had is, our population here is 25, 35,000 between all this within our region. I'm real curious how many communities of 25, 35, 40,000 have one of these training facilities? Does it make economic sense? Or to access in Dandini? It's a big building. I'm sure everybody's seen it, when you drive north on 395. So that's another aspect, again, in terms of your sales to the community at large. Because if your annual cost with this, yes, you're going to have savings to not go to Carson City or to Dandini, but you're going to have other costs associated with running the facility, maintaining the facility, repairing the facility. That's all going to be in your 20-year pro forma on this. So that's kind of my first blush. Oh, the other thing is that when you talked about it being a hazard area, because if it were to develop into an industrial zone or even into housing, it's in the D zone on the club. All of Sierra Meadows is in the D zone. A good portion of Lahontan and Schaefer's Mill are in the D zone. Olympic Heights, Gray's Crossing, Old Greenwood, downtown are all in the D zone. So the areas of most concern are the C zone because they're off the end of the runways. This area as a D zone, it's not at the end of a runway. So it's within 5 miles, but it's not where you see the significant accidents happening. So I'm concerned, look at Ponderosa Golf Course. So using that as the argument of fear, it doesn't feel real to me when I look at the rest of the town being in a Z zone. So I just wanted to put that out there as well.
Sure.
So, thank you very much. And Meredith Watson, I remember she used to run the program at
That's right,
Sierra
yeah.
College.
Yeah,
And
well, thanks a lot for your comments, and just again, we're just kind of looking at some preliminary stuff here and developing the partnerships, and we would intend to go through the whole planning process. So development permit through the town of Truckee and all the proper zoning and all the necessary studies and use permits and the constraints that would come with that. I don't think we're trying to skirt any of the rules or anything, and you know, get the community involved again on the highest and best use of the land, and just really get the conversation going, you know, and you know, we think it would be a great asset. But you bring up some great questions. I got some notes here, and and we got some work to do. I think we know we have a lot of work to do to move this thing forward. But thank you very much.
And I'm willing to talk to you more about the air quality stuff if you want to take a call.
Yeah, absolutely.
Having, just to make a quick, just to touch on, it's not only cost savings for the local districts and stuff, it's the ability to work together. So if North Tahoe comes over and uses the facility, we can go cover them, because there's a huge staffing component that is involved with training. When we pull resources off the line to go train, and Chief McKechnie mentioned that most of our firefighters can't afford to live here. They have to commute from Reno, and that's, so we can't expect them to come in on their off time all the time to train, so that we have to comply with those training requirements while they're on duty. And so that directly affects our staffing for the day and ability to react to emergencies while they're doing training. They have to drop hose, go to the call, come back and resume training. And you can imagine that's impossible to do in Carson City or in Nevada. But if it was a local training facility, they could pause, go do that. We can dedicate equipment just to the training facility so that they don't have to take any frontline equipment offline to go do training, because we'd have dedicated training facility and dedicated training equipment.
That begs a question of, do you not have those agreements right now with an MOU that when your people go to train, you're backfilled from other districts or vice versa as part of your MOUs?
Through our mutual aid agreement, there
Yeah.
is. If we're a drawdown, we can obviously call for a cover ambulance in that respect. But as far as agreements for training, North Tahoe Fire has to go to the Carson City facility as well, and we pay them for that. And they have to backfill the normal operating procedures to backfill the district with overtime. So we just completed our bi-monthly or biannual live fire training at the Carson City facility, and we had to page out and hopefully get enough overtime backfill to allow those firefighters to go to the training. So.
Beginning the dance.
Yeah, that's right.
What would you like from us?
If you want to direct staff to continue working with the fire district, that would be great on a regional training facility.
Well,
We
it's
can work
it's
with
not
Rob
quite
and
our
say
job to direct. We can direct Rob to direct staff,
Oh,
but
okay. Yeah. Good
I
point.
mean, I think it's a great idea. I'd love to see this.
And if I could touch on that, the airport district's they participated in the purchase of our ARF engine, Type 1 engine already. They participate financially with sending firefighters to our specific schools. So I think if we could continue that, or maybe even, you know, like the Chief said, help work with us and see what we can come to and see what level of participation.
Great. All right.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Is there any public comment about this presentation? All right. Thank you so much.
Have a good evening.
Yeah, you too. Okay. Board committee assignments and ad hoc committee reports. Mountain Housing Council report. Lauren, do you have something for us?
Yeah, Emily Vitus is going to do the update. I was in interviews with the director of aviation at last month's meeting, so she's going to fill in for me.
Okay.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear and see me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thumbs up. Okay, great. Hi, good to see you. Good evening, President Rolfe and directors of the board. So I'm going to present this evening on both the strategic plan that the Workforce Housing Agency is working on, but can also give you an update on what Mountain Housing Council is working on with the Housing Hub, which many of you or all of you may have heard of already, but can give you a quick update on that as well. So on the Workforce Housing Agency front, I'll start there and then I'll speak to the Mountain Housing Council component. On the Workforce Housing Agency front, Lauren has included, or your staff has included in your board packet as item 12A, a strategic plan deck. So it's the update to when I was here presenting to you in August, or in front of you in August presenting, I gave you kind of an intro to the draft strategic framework. We now have a draft strategic plan, and at the last board meeting, it was presented to the board for feedback and direction, and the final strategic plan will go in front of my board for approval in January. So as item 12A in your packet, there is the strategic plan deck that was presented to the board, and I just wanted to talk through that briefly this evening. This is a 5-year plan that will be executed in 2023. Just as a quick, what is this and what is the time frame which we are looking at all the items I'm going to present to you this evening. So if you go to tab 12A in your packet, and I believe it's slide 5 or page 5, it's a overview of kind of the areas of, or the targets that we'll be looking at with this strategic plan. So you're welcome to look at that as I'm speaking to this, and then tied to all of that are the goals, right? So we have these areas or these targets that we're going to be working towards over the next 5 years, and we have 5 goals that are going to allow us to work towards those. So the 5 goals I'm going to talk through really quickly, and then open it up for questions if anybody has them. And I'm happy to give an update on Mountain Housing Council as well if that's helpful for you all. So the first goal in achieving our strategic plan targets on page 5 of the slide deck is create innovative financing tools to support workforce housing solutions. When I came and spoke to you last time, I mentioned the development of a 501c3 workforce housing fund that would allow us to start to pursue development and acquisition of housing. So really taking our work to the next step, being able to actually pursue the ownership or unlocking of development acquisition units that we actually hold as assets, and then work with the community to be able to place them in those units. So the development of a workforce housing fund that allows us to pursue development and acquisition. We have about $10 million in soft commitments from our member agencies through that fund, and also have some private partnerships that we're working on that would help us to match those dollars so that we can start to pursue those housing units in a much bigger way. The second goal tied to those strategic plan targets is facilitation of development on publicly owned land. Again, not something that's new to you all. Over the last few years, we've been looking at airport-owned land, other member agency-owned land, trying to understand if we could bring workforce housing to fruition on those parcels. So we have now identified top sites that we can start to move forward on. We do have 4 of them currently. School district, public utility district, Placer County, and the Forest Service, which is a non-member agency but a public partner in which we are working with. So moving those sites forward and working over the next 5 years to actually bring workforce housing development to fruition on those sites. The third goal is pursuit of acquisition. So, what is the lowest hanging fruit that we can pursue? It's the existing units. So utilizing the dollars in that fund, and then member agency dollars and partnerships to actually pursue property that we would hold as an asset and be able to lease out to the general workforce. We do have a goal of pursuing our first property in 2023, and we are building the plans around that currently. Fourth goal is to expand our housing programs. Again, when I was speaking with you in August, we talked about how do we continue to serve our member agencies while serving the greater workforce, of which are constituents of our 7 member agencies. So continuing the existing programs that we are utilizing right now to serve your employees, but then also creating tiered systems and priority processing systems in which we can expand those services to a greater workforce. And then finally, goal 5 is influencing state housing legislation. We do have partners in the region that are working on this currently, but how do we help to move those advocacy efforts forward, right? So we focus on the 80% and above area median income category, which is the majority of our workforce currently, that missing middle. And how do we make sure as an agency we're helping with the state advocacy efforts to make sure that that area of the kind of income category is being looked at. So this whole kind of strategic plan deck that you're seeing, it doesn't mean that we're going to lose sight of working with member agency employees. It does mean that we are expanding our services to look at a greater workforce while continuing to serve those member agencies and their employees. and a few examples of how we'll continue to serve you all and our member agencies, employees specifically. We have a master leasing program we just entered into with the utility district. The hospital is starting their own down payment assistance program. And on top of that, looking at tiered systems in which we can serve your employees and then open up housing stock to other members of the greater workforce. So at the last board meeting that Rob and Lauren were in interviews for, the board provided feedback on that slide deck that you're looking at now, and direction on a few slight tweaks on that strategic plan. But overall, the board was comfortable and supportive of that plan, and we will be moving that plan forward into a full report that provides all of the objective action strategies that you see in that strategic plan deck, and starting to execute on that in January of 2023. So I'll stop there, and then happy to also have the Mountain Housing Council Housing Hub conversation with you all if that would be helpful. But if there's any questions on the Workforce Housing Agency strategic plan front, happy to answer those first.
Anybody have questions?
I have no questions. I have a comment. This is a very aggressive plan, and I hope it's possible because it's very ambitious. Good luck.
And that's why I started with this is a 5-year plan, because we know that there are some lower hanging fruit that we can focus on in year one. We know that we already have member agencies that are willing to unlock dollars through the 501c3 fund for some development and acquisition activities. But we know that we need additional capacity and dollars to be able to fully execute on everything that you're seeing in that many-paged strategic plan deck.
Well, I personally would like to see it work. I've just been disappointed in the success of the past. Or lack of
I feel that
success.
too, Director Stevens.
Thank you.
No questions.
I just have one. Hey, Emily, could you say again that what is the airport-owned land that you were thinking would be suitable for some workforce housing?
Over the last 2 years, we've actually looked at a small parcel of land that is right next to the Clear Capitol building. And then more recently, we actually brought 2 small parcels of land on 267, kind of at the entrance to Schaefer Mill Road, Martis Camp. Brought those back to our consultants to analyze as well. Currently, we do not have airport land that is in our top 8 or our top 4, lowest hanging fruit or best possible opportunity for workforce housing development. Though always happy to sit down and reconsider those parcels if the airport has interest in really moving something forward.
My follow-up to that, actually specific to the Clear Capitol building, which we went over and saw a tour of today. I don't know if you've seen the inside of that, but do you think that any kind of a subdivision of that building would make for workforce housing either temporarily or longer?
I have not seen the inside of that building, but I have mentioned to Lauren and I believe Rob, could we turn that entire building into housing? Is there an opportunity there? So I would love to see the inside of the building and have those conversations and actually bring our planning consultants with me if you think that there is even a conversation to be had there.
I mean, I don't know because I'm not experienced enough on this to know. I mean, it's a beautiful building and it looks like we're going to be discussing what to do with it. So I just thought that might be a consideration. That's all for me.
I think that's a great idea for what it's worth.
Yeah, happy. Yeah, I would love to get inside and look at it and see if there's any opportunity there. I don't know what the infrastructure looks like or the ability to actually transition what I believe is a very kind of open concept space into something that could serve as temporary or longer term housing, whether it's for airport employees specifically or expand it to a greater workforce. So happy to connect with staff on that and take a look at the building.
And, just because I have the club out and D zones, is there other D zone property that the airport owns that are viable? I mean, the 40 acres that's in transition, it may not happen, it may happen. The out by SOAR, these are other areas. Do we want those to be looked at?
Totally. For that and the fire department.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's what we have the most to give is land.
So that's put them in the hopper.
Got the campground, you got the 40 acres, you got clear capital, the stuff out at the end of the road.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you,
that's,
Emily.
That's great to hear. President Rolfe, would you like me to present on just a very quick 2 minutes of what's going on with Mountain Housing Council and the Housing Hub?
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, so Mountain Housing Council, as you all know, is in 2.0, right? So they are in their third of 3 years for that kind of 2.0, kind of second iteration of the Mountain Housing Council. And what's coming from that is, or what came from the Regional Housing Implementation Plan, which is a part of this 3-year initiative, was the need for a hub of sorts that could really take on almost all of the housing programming, strategy, advocacy, et cetera, in the region. And the Housing Hub was going to be that. The Workforce Housing Agency over the last year has been working through our own strategic planning process and has realized that to best serve our member agencies and their employees, we need to better serve our community. That means everything that I presented to you tonight, as well as expansion to look at serving the greater workforce. Because of that, the Housing Hub is taking on a bit of a different look. So on a weekly basis, we are meeting with NLTRA, Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation, and the Housing Hub Committee of about 20 individuals to develop 2 partnering nonprofits, the Workforce Housing Fund under the Housing Agency and the Housing Hub. And so they will be complementary nonprofits that are working separately, and the Housing Hub will be focused on developer technical assistance, project advocacy, working with our jurisdictions on code policy shifts to be more open to, friendly, accessible to workforce housing developers. And let's see, is there anything else there? I think that's it. It's really the technical assistance and developer support and the advocacy component. We have talked about should they be living together and decided that public dollars tied to project and developer advocacy and the needs for shift in policy code and how do we get to yes with the town and counties needs to be separate from the dollars that are actually tied to the funding of projects to bring them to fruition. And so because of that, we are working in concert to create these organizations while kind of walking down our own pathways with the development of them. So the Housing Hub is getting very close to having a really solid framework, and they're hoping in the next few weeks they can actually have the governance framework and really start to move forward with the creation of that 501c3 for the Housing Hub as well. So what we've all been asking for in the region as far as an organization that can really serve all of the needs of our community on the housing front is now happening just in 2 complementary or partnering organizations, which I think is very exciting. I will leave it at that. Happy to answer questions, happy to work with them to come present to you as they get closer to having that final framework. But really excited to see this stuff moving forward.
It sounds great. Does anybody have any questions about the mountain housing?
Thanks.
Okay. Is there any public comment? Thank you very much, Emily. Sounds
Thank
like
you all.
things
Good
are
to see
moving
you.
forward. Yep.
Yeah,
Awesome.
thanks.
Okay. Master plan project update. Do we have any updates on the master plan, Rob?
Nothing beyond what's in my report. I expect to have more substantial feedback in January board meeting after we finish the noise study that's going on right now.
Okay. The hangar use policy, that's kind of on hold right now, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. CTA, I'm going to tell them about our last meeting.
I believe the last meeting that we've had, that we haven't covered, was probably an internal planning meeting for our next quarterly meeting. The first quarter meeting had quite a turnout. which
Huge.
which was this room full,
completely full.
every seat.
Yeah.
We hit close to the maximum occupancy for that meeting. We may need to work with other entities that have a larger room actually for the next quarterly meeting. We're talking about a variety of concepts about information sharing around the Climate Transformation Alliance, the partners involved in it, and what the next steps are for goals and objectives of the organization. And I think that will be coming out in the next quarterly meeting as the main partners of the alliance begin talking about what goals and objectives we want to be pursuing as an organization across this region.
And I'll add that our contract with Sierra Business Council ran out, but they've still been doing a bunch of work for us. And so there was an appetite from the 3 founding members to keep them on for another year. And the goal is to write 4 or 5 grants this year, which will include their fees. So they'll be paying for themselves in time to do the advocacy, the grant writing, the relationship building, that sort of thing.
Yeah, there's really some great programs out there and helping with some seed funding from the partner agencies involved in the Climate Transformation Alliance to, exactly as you said, Kat, to help put the Sierra Business Council in a position to write those proposals for those grants to provide the long-term money for the organization.
Right.
Absolutely.
Great. Do we have an ACT meeting scheduled for December? What's the time?
I would like to not schedule one for December this
Okay.
next month.
Great. All right, general manager's report. We've all read the report. Are there any highlights that you'd like to talk about, or?
Other than questions you might have from the board, there's one aspect of that I did put in there with item number 8, updated board policies instructions. The board's been going through a series of, just like today, updating policies instructions, and just as we look at those and further refine those, there is policy instruction 202, board of directors basis of authority, code of ethics and meeting and agenda management policy. And then there's PI 208, which is recording of retention of board meetings and board meeting minutes. And as we look at these 2 items together, I really would like, it defines a little bit. I have some of the quoted material in there about how we do meeting minutes. The board has, in the policies, provided kind of a broad spectrum about how we do meeting minutes, particularly around capturing the board itself. When we meet, is the meeting minutes help define the decisions that are made with the board of directors. Is one of the core purposes of the meeting minutes. Sometimes when we have a lot of public comment, we try to describe that public comment to some extent to be consistent over time, month to month, meeting minutes to meeting minutes. And what I've found is perhaps a more clear way to do that is not try to re-describe, even in a brevity way, what every individual public comment is and contains, because sometimes public comments in 3 minutes cover a lot of territory. And trying to surmise that in a few brief statements or sentences is really difficult. Thankfully, we do have recorded meetings that is available to the public, and we keep those online so people can go back and watch. What I suggest is there's guidance in there about how much we try to recapture in the meeting minutes, and I would suggest that, particularly with public comments, that we record the individual's name that's making a public comment related to a topic, and we leave it at that, and not try to re-describe every public comment that takes place. And if that meets with the board's discretion within the policy, or the discretion you provide me and Lauren to write those minutes and provide those to you, that is the direction I'd like to lean towards in trying to summarize the meeting minutes specifically around those 2 policies. With regard to the first policy, PI 202, it really is just a reminder, and that we always ask our public commenters to be respectful in this forum, just like we cover the keep your peace aspects of public meetings. We're all in here to work collaboratively together. We respect public comments, and we hope those are at a high, respectful level, and in keeping with those aspects of keep your peace. Yeah. That's it. That's the highlights I have.
Great. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Okay. Any public comment? All right. Finance and administration.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kat, I did have another question related to the GM report, not to that specific
Oh,
thing.
sure. Yeah, go ahead.
And I don't know if anybody else on the board, you might, because we worked on this. Is it possible to get like a quarterly update on the pilots group, on the attendance and who has like in terms of the optioning for the membership incentive or the training incentive and all that? Now that it's been up for a while, I'd be curious to kind of see how that is going.
Yeah, I can work some more of that into my report monthly and talk to kind of quarterly about,
Yeah.
I'm happy to share that information, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Give
for me, it
perspective
would
what the
have to be-
pilots are talking about.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Quarterly would be great for me, just so we can see if
Yeah, sounds
at some
great.
point in time, just to measure to see if it's making a difference.
Sure, sounds great.
Yeah.
Great idea.
And, jumping into the awesome comment report,
Go ahead.
just, now that Vector has their county touch and goes, I'd like to see it reported. It normally has just been 30% factor thrown at it, but I think that would be nice to capture in here a number of touch and goes. And there were some other things I talked with Rob about in regards to this report, and he and Jeff are digesting on it.
Yeah, as we bringing on a new staff member here at the end of January, as you have my report there, Jeff Manesco, Colonel, United States Air Force, almost retired. He'll be joining us at the end of January. I think as he comes on board as Director of Aviation, we'll have more bandwidth to produce a variety of different reports to help communicate things at a higher executive level to meet the board's desires they've expressed for that kind of information.
Great.
Tying in local transient, jet piston, a little more specificity. So I'm excited about that. Thanks.
Awesome. Anybody else? Okay. Kelly, do you have anything to report, or do you just want to take questions?
Check to see if anyone has any questions. We're bottom line 2.7 million ahead of budget and $1 million behind last year, but last year had a lot of grant money at this time, so take that for what it's worth. Making our annual ADP, the additional discretionary payment to CalPERS tomorrow. If we can get everything set up banking wise. And then just for fun, we did 42,000 in landing fees, our new and exciting landing fee program in October. So looking forward to see how this all shakes out going forward and working with Vector and making sure everything gets brought into our system.
And we're collecting that automatically, not billing, you're paying somebody to get the money?
Yep, Vector's doing it for us. They are 46% collected as of today.
Very nice.
Great.
Kelly, has there, or Rob, has there been any significant discussion about the landing fee from aviators or others coming in?
No, we just had a good teleconference with Vector, kind of discussing the platform in the first month of October's kind of results, and they're well ahead of their normal uptake on collections, billing and collections for the month of October for us than they saw with their other previous clients their first month. So I would say overall we're getting very strong positive feedback, and I wouldn't characterize any of it as negative, to be honest. Just normal course of business for airports.
Yeah, most of our pilots, they deal with this all day, every day at every other airport, so it's not really anything different for them.
Thank you.
Great.
Any other questions?
All right, any public comment? Okay, future agenda priorities and meeting management. Well, I was going to mention, we have we talked about this earlier, but we should be getting a doodle poll, I think, pretty soon to try to start meeting with the strategic planning group. Rob and I are
Right.
meeting on Monday, and so we'll check in with Shauna and Ellen and see where they are as far as their timeline. Anything else? Staff and board member conference attendance. Anybody go anywhere? You're going somewhere.
Maui.
Lucky. Okay, meeting review and direction to staff.
I had a question on the rolling agenda.
Oh, on the rolling agenda,
Yeah.
okay.
Was just, again, asking about how the charter, CSDA charter opportunity, how that, that Rob was talking to Lauren.
Yeah, I think
Trying to get
by the
some-
January board meeting, we should have some more feedback to further that discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, so
That in
we'll
here
add
then.
that to the rolling agenda calendar, and I'll talk to whoever the board president is at that time. You still have that on the agenda here,
Okay,
to agendize that. Yeah.
thank you.
Awesome.
Can I add one thing for the conferences? Lauren and
Oh, that's
myself
right.
and Emily, we
That's
went to the CalPERS conference in Southern California.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. We learned a ton of stuff and got a lot of great information, and a specific person that actually works with us on the payroll side from CalPERS. So it's good stuff.
That's awesome. Good. Worth your time. Is that something you guys have done before? This is the first time you've gone?
My first time.
Okay.
Yeah, we've never gone. It's usually,
Take my own advice here.
it's usually, it was in a much more accessible location this year. Typically, it's like in Palm Desert, which is difficult just to get to quickly for a 3-day conference. And then previously it was in Oakland, but it was during COVID and we weren't going anywhere. But we plan on making it an annual, I would like to make it an annual conference to attend, just because they're always passing new legislation. There's always something coming up with CalPERS, and all of our specialists are there that we have a hard time getting a hold of over phone, and we could find them in person and sit them down at a table and talk to them, which is really great. Answer all our questions. It's great.
That's great. Okay, is there anything else? Any questions, public comment? All right, special action item, annual selection of board president and vice president. Rick?
This election hasn't been certified yet, I believe.
Yeah.
However, if you look at PI 209, we have the option of appointing interim officers. And I would like to do that by making a motion that we appoint Kat Rolfe to be president until the next board meeting, when it will be certified. It should be certified soon. They're down to the final few votes. I don't think anything's going to change. So I move that we appoint Kat Rolfe interim manager until the election is certified. President Kat Rolfe be appointed interim president of the board.
Second.
Public comment? Okay.
Director Hetherington,
Yes.
Director Diamond,
Yes.
Director Odette,
Yes.
Director Stevens.
Yes.
Doesn't she get to vote?
Director Rolfe, I believe you do get the vote on this.
Yes.
And keeping in the same framework, I guess I would put David as vice president interim, because that's where he was this year as well. So I would nominate him as an interim vice president.
Is there a second?
Nope.
Okay.
With that motion failed, I nominate Mary Hetherington as an interim vice president.
Is there a second? Rick?
Wow.
We gotta have somebody.
Okay, I'll make a motion, we appoint Teresa Odette as interim vice president of the board until after the election is certified in our next meeting.
I'll second. Public comment? No. Roll call?
Roll call. Director Stevens.
Yes.
Director Rolfe.
Yes.
Director Diamond.
Yes.
Director Hetherington.
Yes.
Director Odette.
Yes.
Okay. Certified on the 16th, is that correct? Uh, On the 8th of December? Oh, okay. I haven't heard anything otherwise. Board member announcements. Does anybody have any announcements?
I have an announcement.
Okay.
After consulting with my clinical psychologist that I live with, and finding out that Tom Meadows is younger than I am, which shocked me, I am announcing that I will not run for re-election in 2 years. And I have thrown away all of my election signs, and it was cathartic. And I'm just saying that as a result of this election and the showing how it went, I'm not going to run again. I think the board's in good hands, and we'll see what happens in 2 years. It's a long time, but it's no, no, no. That's my announcement.
Is there a second? I'm not seconding. But we still got you for 2 years. We can work on you.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, and signs can be remade. Okay. I guess are we done? We're done. Wait,
Make a motion to adjourn.
it's only 6:10.
I second that 610.
I second the motion. Roll call.
Director Stevens.
Yes.
Director Odette.
Yes.
Director Rolfe.
Yes.
Director Diamond.
Yes.
Director Hetherington.
Yes.
You're adjourned.